say settle our minds, it just means instead of following all the thoughts that arise in the mind, like thoughts about the past, getting here, thoughts about what's in the bookstore, thoughts about the cookies, or thoughts about what you're going to do later, instead of thinking about those, just bring your awareness to this moment of your body and mind. So being fully aware of your body sitting here. Notice the temperature of the room on your skin, the pressure of the cushion or the chair against your legs. Perhaps the quality of the light on your eyes, the colors in the room, the smells. Taste of tea and cookies, water. Allow yourself to be present for these experiences. And then just check in with your mind. Is it calm? Is it anxious? Is it sleepy? Is it worried? Or is it just present? Yourself a few moments to really feel present, bringing your attention to the sensation of the breath going in and out of the body, either at the tip of the nose or the rise and fall of the belly. And let that sensation be the focus of your mental attention, letting everything else fall to the background. Take a moment to remember why you came this morning. And generate a positive intention to use your time well. And perhaps you would like to think about what's important to you. And generate a positive intention for today, not just this moment. When you're ready, open your eyes and find a gold prayer book so we can recite the four measurables on page 34. Thirty-four. 34. Can you hear me, Ollie? Is this loud enough? You sure? 34. Maybe it's not loud. There we go. When I start escalating, you can tell me now, move the microphone back now. Back and forth. So, I'm pretty loud, so. Okay. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So the purpose of a spiritual practice, in Buddhism, it's really about developing a positive mind. Of course, we need to understand what a positive mind is. And the reason it's important is that positive minds, it's taught that they lead to experiences of happiness, whereas negative minds lead to the experience of unhappiness. So the mind is important because the mind is what directs our speech and our actions of body. So it all starts with the mind. And the Buddha also taught that we're kind of out of control with our minds. So, because we've developed all sorts of habits of mind that we think are skillful habits that will bring us happiness, but in fact are upside down. They're exactly the habits that will lead to suffering. And this is based on sort of an ignorance of how things are. Like one of the ways in which we're ignorant is we think happiness is out here. It's about, what we get for Christmas when we're children, that it's about if we get the, whatever it is that we want, we're filled with wants every day. What we want for breakfast, what we want to drink, where we want to go, what we want to think about. We just, what do we want to watch? Whatever. Countless little thoughts of, ooh, I want this, I want that, can I have this, can I do that, can I blah, 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 blah. And if we really observe what's going on in our mind, we're going to discover all sorts of wants. And we think happiness is following them. That if I just follow this, if I just really see what I want and then go after it, I'll find happiness. And the Buddha said, well, we're kind of on the wrong track there because happiness is not out here. We can't buy happiness. We can't meet happiness. That happiness is a state of mind that we have to cultivate from within. So having a positive attitude can help us get there. Recognizing what is a positive attitude, and then recognizing when we're not thinking that way at all, and trying to encourage ourselves to look towards the positive. And then to try to remember that our happiness is not independent of others. That we're very interdependent, so the way we think, the way we speak, the way we act is going to impact other people, and that impacts our happiness. We feel, this is one of those good news, bad news things. We care about how we treat each other. When we act badly, we usually feel badly about it later. In that moment, we're overcome with some desire that we think just has to happen this way or that way, and we act on that, and so we might be a bit rude, a bit selfish, a bit whatever in getting that. And then later we think, we don't feel good about it because we're interdependent. We're not really independent. So we want to keep that in mind, that part of having a positive attitude is setting aside that sense of me all the time and recognize that we are part of a group. Always. We're always part of a group. So no matter whether, we live alone and we're at home, and that our actions, even when we're home alone, matter in the long term to everybody. Because whatever we practice at home, we carry with us, when we leave home. So if we watch nothing but violent, hero movies where they get what they want by killing all the bad guys, we carry that attitude with us, this is a bad guy, so I can do whatever I need to do to put them down. Now, fortunately, we don't go around with, whatever the current weapons of choice are, but, sometimes we do, and tragedy happens. We need to recognize that, if we don't take good care of our mind and how we're thinking, we develop habits that are really unskillful. And when they're based on what we think, we need, if they're all about us, then we're leaving out 7 billion other people. Yes.
Why do we do that? Why do we think that if we get what we want, we'll be happy?
Well, first of all, because, when we're babies, it sort of seems that way. You cry if you have an attentive caregiver, so that if you're hungry, you get food, so that there's certainly a relationship between certain physical needs and getting those needs met that make us feel content. But why? Why is getting our physical needs met? Why are they important?
Survival.
Yeah.
What?
Survival.
Because to survive.
Yeah, basically.
Because if we don't get any food at all, eventually we will die. And even babies know that. So, then, yes, Vincent.
Isn't it true you could never, ever, ever answer the question, why? It's a mental thing.
Yes.
It goes on forever. Why is the sky blue?
Well, we can answer them. It's just that how relevant is it? It's sort of like, scientists, that's what they do, They keep going, well, I can tell you why the sky is blue. And I can even tell you it's not blue for everybody. But it's, we can go in ad nauseum about that, but it's just, it's this idea that as soon as we think of I, we want to feed that I and give it what it wants. And this is how look at your eyes, just picture yourself as you are sitting here. Who's in the center of your view?
You are.
At this moment, because you're looking at me, but you're in the center of your view.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
And we have stereoscopic vision to make it even more so like that. And so from every point of view, we really think, that we forget that everybody has a different point of view, and we're just concerned about our point of view. And we really kind of act as if it's the same for everybody. Like we're shocked when you see something, you can't believe, did you see that? And they're going, no, what are you talking about? And you can't believe they didn't even see it. But it's because they're coming from their point of view. So they're not attracted to whatever's happening, or they just didn't notice because they don't care, whatever. It's really interesting how, when we really look, how much of our experience is coming totally from our minds, from our habits, what we notice. We notice what we notice because we have the habit of noticing those things. I have the habit of noticing attractive men. And I notice that. And it's obvious that it doesn't matter how old I get, I'm going to notice that. So, that's my habit. It's kind of embarrassing as a nun to have that habit, but, I do, so there you go. So the point is that we all have these kind of habits. We notice when there's food we like, when we walk into a meal. We notice if there's, and it's all about us, what we want, and this is just our strong habit. And the Buddha said it's because as soon as we recognize there's a self, we grasp at that self, and start to cater to it, thinking that it will make us happy. And some of it, it's reinforced by our physical needs, because it's true that we have physical needs that need to be met, So it's just, and then we go from there to kind of like, well, as long as I'm meeting my physical needs, I might as well like it. So then we have to have the best food and the best beverage and the best this and that, we just keep feeding these things, thinking if I get the perfect this or that, then I'll finally be happy. But we grow up, don't we? And we start to recognize that maybe there's something faulty about that logic. We recognize that of course we can't buy happiness. We still try. We know that it's whatever relief we get will be temporary. You buy a new car, and yes, you have the temporary relief from having a car that's falling apart. But will the new car always be a new car? Doesn't take long before it's that old car. So, and that's the state of things. Everything is like that. And so the more that we recognize that if we're putting our hopes and our happiness into what's outside of us, or even our own bodies, we are going to be disappointed, because there's nothing that's reliable. But our state of mind, we're really pretty good at consistency. If you've developed the habit of, of impatience, you're pretty consistently impatient. We can develop very strong, persistent ways of thinking and actions. That's good news, because we can also change them. We are not stuck in one habit or another. We can recognize the unskillfulness of what we're doing now and decide, oh, I think I won't do that anymore. And we've all changed numerous things in our lives. learned a lot of things, we've applied those things, we've internalized those things, and we can just keep doing it. So the purpose of spiritual teachings is to try to help us focus on what will actually be of help, as opposed to what we've already been doing, and it hasn't been all that helpful. So one of the things the Buddha said is that if we shift our habit from focusing on the self and start focusing on others, we'll find more happiness. And I know I ask this every time. What is one of the immediate things of, not focusing on the self and focusing on others that happens? And this is why I ask it repeatedly.
It takes your mind off yourself.
And what does that do?
Whatever, and if you're depressed or if you're irritated, you forget about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have the habit of thinking, oh, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, and you quit thinking about yourself, you're just not noticing because your focus is on something else. That's really helpful. It's unbelievably helpful to just quit thinking about yourself. Quit thinking about whether you're getting what you want, or whether you like this breakfast or don't like this breakfast, or whether you like this job or not like this job. What is it, the kind of things that you worry about or think about or get dissatisfied from? I know you don't have any of them. You're always happy. And this is good. We're all trying to emulate you. So, but for those of us who aren't Arlene, and still have, dissatisfactions, where does your mind take you? Yeah.
Well, most of us, I would guess, worry about our financial condition, paying the bills, and saving money for retirement, things like that.
Yeah, and the older you get, it gets even more pronounced, doesn't it? It's sort of like, is there enough money in the world? May I please not outlive my income? And all that stuff. So yes, that's certainly a lot of people's concerns. What other kinds of concerns? Younger people, what are you concerned about? Because I've forgotten. Reputation, yes. So, and conveniently, we tie that with earning money.
Yeah.
That can kind of help out those later years. But, this is the, so we are constantly focusing on, accumulating the things that we think we need for whatever, safety, security, all those things. To take care of our children when you're grown up, then to take care of yourself, till the end of time. So, taking your focus off yourself doesn't mean not planning. It doesn't mean not making sure you're taking, planning for the future and taking care of the needs of the self. And one of the reasons for that is we need to do that in order to take care of others. It's like if we want, and I know a lot of parents do this. They really don't want to have to depend on their children when they're of old age. So they're trying to take care of themselves so their children won't have to take care of them. And the longer we live, the harder that becomes. But since also, it seems like youth is getting longer too, so we live at home for a lot longer, so it probably evens out a little bit. But it's still that desire to just be able to meet your own needs without having to depend on others. And we live in a culture that supports that. We have a, sort of not a communal culture where it's just assumed that everybody, they don't all live in the same house, they'll live next door. It's a different kind of culture. So it isn't necessarily selfish to take care of your needs. You know, so you want to make that distinction. We do need self-care. We just don't need to put our self-care above everybody else. When we start to do that, then our actions start to lead to our own unhappiness in the future. Why would that be?
Because you're always grasping.
Why?
Always grasping for, why?
What's
Because you have
motivating us? What's, you know?
Self-cherishing.
Yeah, just self-cherishing, again and again and again. The teachings say that if you really want to know why, all you have to find is your own self-cherishing in it. Where are you in the picture? You know, if you're really struggling with what someone else wants of you, you want to look at, what is it? Where am I getting it? You know, so that at least you can really address what's driving you. If two people are in, you know, in a relationship, they have to figure out why they want this other person to do this or that. You know, they need to recognize what their own needs are so that they can communicate them. You know, instead of trying to, you know, have the other person figure it out because you haven't. You know, so it's this, you know, way of recognizing there's an I that drives us. And the more it drives us, the less likely we are to be happy because we're so self-absorbed. And since the nature of life isn't, you know, it's not like there's perfection around us, right? So if we just focus on that I and whether we're enjoying or not enjoying or whether this is satisfactory or not, most of the time, it's not going to be because it's not perfect. People don't say the right things. You don't get, you know, not all the things you drink are delightful. Not all the things you eat are delightful. Not all the things that you have to do are delightful. Not the weather's not delightful every day. You know, it's just constant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to make yourself go to the gym, and then you enjoy it for a little span of time, and then you're over that. But then you enjoy the shower that's after the gym, you know, and then you enjoy, you know, the feeling that you get that you actually took care of yourself and went to the gym, you know. But then you forget about that. So we want to, instead of getting caught up in the ups and downs of ordinary day-to-day living, you know, really focus more on the positive aspect of existence. You know, so one of those things, like this morning we did a meditation, just thinking about how much goodness exists. You know, that at this moment, there are countless actions of kindness happening. Whether it's, you know, grandparents smiling by the touch of a grandchild, you know, by just, you know, helping your neighbor do something. My stepmom fell last week taking out the trash and cut her hand, you know, at night in New Orleans, you know. But her neighbor noticed. Her neighbor took her to the hospital, you know. So it's, you know, that this kind of stuff is always happening. You know, there are all these, you know, it's not just the health professionals out there who are out there doing their thing, and all the teachers out there being helpful doing their thing, and all the children helping their parents, and the parents helping their children, and the relatives helping each other, and the friends helping, you know, it just is endless. You know? So what we, you know, to try to have a positive attitude, it can become from that point of view of, how can I be of help? What can I do today to contribute to all this goodness? Instead of focusing on, you know, how frightening the world can be, or what's happening, you know, here and there that's terrible or whatever, and instead, you know, have compassion for people who are in that condition in that moment, you know, but focus on how can I be of help. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
probably would say, not really. You know, that we give a lot of weight to what we're feeling in our culture. I'm not sure that the teachings support that that's necessary, because it's the result of past actions. Okay? So, what it would say, what the teachings do say, is you don't want to suppress things. It's not about pretending that existence is perfect. That's not the attitude we're going for, because the conditions of the world are not perfect. You know, so it's about not getting caught in this attitude of despair because it's not perfect. And sometimes it's horrible, you know. So it's not about suppressing, you know, like when you have one of those experiences where, you know, you're watching the news or something and you just get hit with a real feeling of sadness and horror at something you just heard about, you know, or you have a memory of something that happened to you that's you know, brings up grief and whatever it brings up. It's not about just, you know, like, oh, well, that didn't happen. No, it's not about trying to pretend the world is nice. It's about trying to accept the world is not nice, but how can I be positive? Not, I don't mean like, how can my actions be of use as opposed to contribute to this misery? You know, so that when we recognize, when we have that kind of experience arise, we can take care of it. We can acknowledge, wow, yes, that was suffering. Even the memory of it is suffering, you know. And this is how everybody is. Everybody has these experiences. I'm not alone. I don't have to feel like I'm the only person who feels this way. There isn't a being out there who hasn't experienced this. We all experience loss and grief and horror and horrible things, not only that have happened to us, but that we have done, you know. So it's not about denying those things, but it's about not letting the fact that we experience those things define us or be us. Because if we suppress it, it'll explode at some point. If we indulge it, it will take over. You know, we want to just, when it happens, you be there for it. You don't try to suppress it. You just ignore and generate compassion for yourself. Wow, this is how we recognize we're all in the same boat. You know, that everybody's having these kinds of experiences. We don't know when, you know, we don't know what form it took, but it doesn't really matter. You know, that pretty much by the time you're an adult, everyone has some devastating experiences. So being able to sit with that for yourself is helpful, and it also helps you be able to sit with others when they're going through it. Because that is something we can't fix things, you know, most things, you know, that bring up those kinds, the reason they bring up those kinds of strong emotions is because they can't just be fixed. You know? So being able to sit with someone, whether it's yourself or someone else, when those feelings are there, is one of the best ways we can be of benefit to each other. You know, not run and hide from it, not act like, oh, it'll be okay, dear, when it's not. You know. Yes.
Kind of on the line between helping self and helping others. When you're trying to make amends, past misdeeds, how do you draw the line between what's appropriate and then just self-flagellation?
Yeah, well, right. Yeah. And to me, it's that, the difference between guilt and regret. You know, guilt is when we think that our actions are who we are, you know. And the Buddha just said there is no who we are, because we're just a series of countless moments of body and mind. And many of those moments were terribly unskillful. And we do want to have compassion for the harm we've done to others, no question. No. But we don't have to pack our suitcase with it, you know, and carry it forever. What we do want is to remember it, because we want to remind ourselves there's nothing wrong with every time you think about the fact that you did something that was terrible, that you think, wow, that was terrible. That's a good thing to know. You know, you want to remember that so you try not to do it again. You know, it has its purpose. But you don't want to sit there and think, I'm a terrible person, you know, blah, 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 blah. Because then, you know, you're doing is saying, I can't change. And it's hard to change if you think, I can't change. You know, then you're setting yourself up to do it again and again and again. You know, so that's not helpful to anyone. So it's really about, you know, being able to acknowledge, you know, because many of the things we've done, they're not going to just come up that day. You know, they'll come up again and again in our minds. I have things that I said to my dad when he had Alzheimer's and I was taking care of him, you know, that it just horrified me. You know, the thought comes back up and I go, I can't believe I, you know, thought that. You know, it's just shocking. But that just, if I just sit there and go, I, you know, am hopeless. You know, look at the terrible ways I can think and da-da-da-da-da. That does no one any good. And it's not true. I also did lots of good things. And so we have to be able to not indulge our past negative actions with this idea that that's it. You know, I'm damaged goods. You know, I have to apologize for the rest of time, you know. No, you just have to take responsibility for it, you know, make the amends that you can. Now, you can't always make amends directly, but, you know, but then move on, you know, and recognize all the things that are part of those actions, you know, so that you can look out for them, you know. So you can take care of those things. Like, you know, I know when I'm really, really nervous, I tend to be really, really sharp-tongued. You know? And so when I feel nervous, I need, you know, that's my clue. Okay, watch your speech, and I'm not successful all that often. So, but I'm working at it, and that's all we can do. You know, and that is, you know, so this idea that if we carry around all of our mistakes, that somehow that's what we deserve or that's what will benefit the world, it's not true. You know, nobody benefits by someone feeling like they're, you know, useless or worse, harmful. You know, we don't benefit from that. We benefit from people recognizing their unskillfulness and trying to change it. That we benefit from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to get back to the feeling thing for a second.
Yeah, because we're attached to that.
Totally.
Totally. I know.
For years, like my whole life, and that's one of my main missions in looking at Buddhist philosophy. Is this whole notion of
And
of
keep
dealing
in
with the
mind, just technically, that feeling in Buddhism is defined as the experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So that's what feeling. So when we talk about feelings in our culture, we're talking, they don't even have that word in Buddhism. It's just a state of mind, different states of mind. And some are helpful and some are not, you know. But the fact that we distinguish between intellect and emotions. Is that a fair division? And in Buddhism, they're all states of mind. That love and compassion are correct states of mind, and wisdom is a correct state of mind, whereas greed and jealousy and are not correct states of mind. So just to, because sometimes when I'm talking, I kind of tend towards that definition, and so just to keep my mind on it.
Yeah, thank you. So that's helpful. Right? It's just so has been really adopting the notion that it's my thoughts that drive my feelings. And I used to think that my thoughts were invaluable, that I had no control over my thoughts. And this is one of the beauties of this practice, is that I get to really start to get to look at my mind and look at ways of controlling my mind. I need inputs from many different things to get the same message. One that I got very recently regarding this whole thing is a Shakespeare quote. Things are neither good or bad, only thinking makes it so. And that really helped me recently in terms of managing feelings, which I know by evidence that I can switch on and off, or the thing that makes me feel bad might make another person feel good. So it's the judgment of the thing. Moreover, I find that particularly when it comes to bad feelings and feeling miserable, it's an incredibly selfish thing ultimately. That it serves serves me in some way that is incredibly selfish. I didn't get something, somebody didn't meet my expectations, and so on. And
Well, yeah, we certainly want to make the distinctions between our rationalizations for why we are the way we are and why we do the things we do, but it's like, it takes a lot of looking and a lot of familiarity with the self and how you think to recognize. Like, I know that I used to carry a lot of guilt. And I finally realized that it was giving me permission not to try to change, not to take responsibility for the way I behaved. And so I had to simply tell myself every time the guilt would arise to, thanks for sharing, but you're not helping, and just keep going. It's sort of like, yes, okay, I can't erase my past. All I can do is not act that way in the future. That's all we can do. So, and if you keep letting yourself let go, eventually it doesn't arise so much. It's not like I come from that place like I used to. It's just not very present in my life. That I still have plenty to regret, but it's very different. The regret is really this acknowledgement, oh, and my mouth is gone again. It's this acknowledgement that, yes, I've been unskillful, I have harmed, I've done this, and it's up to me to change that, as opposed to putting it in my suitcase. Oh, just another reason to hate myself, another reason not to, to give up, blah, 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 which, certainly doesn't bring happiness to me. But it's a very challenging balancing act. And sometimes it helps to have, a reality check with people whose opinion you trust, that are reliable. If you're making amends, you may have a sponsor. You want to check in with people who know more than you do about, whatever you're working through. And that can be very helpful. Yes?
I'm just wondering, because I related very much to what everyone is saying. So when these mental tendencies, I think the irony is that the practice is, this whole practice has been deeply, deeply transformative, slowly and with a lot of setbacks. But the more you look at these mental tendencies and see them, if you are in the teachings as that they're impermanent, that they're changing, that they're not, don't have any inherent independent existence and all of that. But the more you look at them, there's something about that that sometimes reinforces them, for me at least. And so, like you were talking about the interrelatedness of life and the goodness, and sometimes one sees disconnectedness and isolation, and that feels like a mental tendency because it comes up a lot. So when you're in the throes, I guess, then what is the practice?
Well, part of the practice is
it
just allowing yourself that experience. You
Right.
just, okay, right now I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
so you let that pass. And then you want to examine things. Because one of the mistakes we make, according to the teachings, is that we think because we feel a certain way, it's true. That it's valid in some way. Like, what makes it valid? It's just the way you're used to responding to something. Doesn't mean that's invalid. It just sort of is, it's like, if you taste something new and you may respond with sort of like, because it's new and you've never had that taste. When teenagers and people in their 20s are starting to try, different taste buds, and they, spent their whole life, kind of going, mushrooms, no, and now they're trying these things out. They may respond with, your tongue just kind of goes, ugh. But then you have a second taste and a third taste, and then it settles down, and you find that, oh, this is kind of pretty good. That just because we react a certain way doesn't mean that it's accurate. That somehow it's really telling you something other than, wow, I didn't expect that, or whatever, But we give a lot of weight to our reactions. And so we just want to check out, like you said, like, we need this, recognize what are our tendencies. If we keep paying attention to what's going on with us, we may realize that's just my habit. I tend to react to new information with sort of like, I don't know about that, or to change, that same way, like, wait, slow down, We want to start recognizing what are the conditions for certain tendencies of mind to arise. So, like we often recognize, if you're in a boss, you might recognize that certain employees, every time you try to ask them to do something differently, they react defensively. Oh, I didn't do that wrong, or whatever. They haven't heard what you're actually asking, that nobody's saying you did anything wrong, and da-da-da. Because that's just, criticism is the condition for them to respond that way, with fear that they've done something wrong. And so, you work with that. You work, because you're the boss and you need to get certain things, but so this, so you try to accommodate that tendency so that you can finally get through and communicate what you need, But you don't, so we need to do that with ourselves, is recognize what conditions elicit what responses so that we can recognize our patterns and then decide, is this skillful or not? Is this working for me or not? Is this even remotely accurate or not? Because we mislead ourselves. We lie to ourselves. We get it wrong. We come from assumptions that are baseless. This is just, we gather all this information as we go through time, and we draw conclusions that sometimes are completely faulty, and sometimes only semi-faulty. So sorting it all out can be challenging. But mostly it's just that recognition of, I'm responding to some condition here. Let me check this out before I make it concrete, before I turn it into, that it is this way or something. We need to remember how impermanent everything is, that our moods change, that even our thoughts about something change constantly, while not being dismissive of heartfelt reactions, recognizing that we don't need to superimpose something extra on top of it, so that we can just have these experiences, these thoughts, and be able to also observe at the same time with a certain amount of distance, instead of being hooked by it all and dragged around by the way we're responding. Yes, President?
Is the entire intention of the Buddha to transform the mind so that we decondition it. Our mind has gotten conditioned from the time we come through the womb.
Mhm.
We have a pure mind. Now it gets conditioned, parents, society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so with the regular practice of meditation, we are reaching towards the purified mind. And so
Well, we're
after-
not born with a pure mind, according to the Buddha. We're born with already, because this isn't the only time we come around, you know. So the basis of the mind is pure. It doesn't get harmed by all our misconceptions. And so, yes, the practice is all about cleaning that up, removing the misperceptions, the misconceptions, so that we can actually understand how things actually are, you know, as opposed to through all these misleading filters that we have, our states of mind. But our states of mind are now, right now, operating within this ignorance of how we exist. And so it's mistaken. It's always mistaken.
And so with the constant practice,
Yep.
the negative mind is changed, it's transformed.
Right.
So we were talking before about the negativity. And as a meditator of many years, I'm convinced that meditation washes away or neutralizes negativity.
Yeah, if you
It's
know
just
what you're doing, that's
practice.
correct.
It's a practice.
But it's, exactly. So what's your question? Or,
It's not a question.
so should we just all shut up now and meditate?
I'm making a statement. Because I train people, I do this.
Yeah.
Hans Selye says that the major thing of stress is to change our perception. And that's where the Buddha comes in. The Buddha practice gives us the method of changing our perception.
And that's what I'm trying to discuss,
Yeah.
is the method. So focusing on the states of mind that arise, that overwhelm us, that actually, you know, even the states of mind that seduce us, you know, infatuation is just as disturbing as grief. You know, it's this, it hooks us into habits that are not necessarily skillful. We're drawn to what we like. We're really averse to what we don't like. And we want to pay attention to that's just dragging us back and forth. If we just pay attention more to our internal self, to what's going on in our minds, then we aren't dragged around back and forth. You know, and we don't need to just sit in meditation, although it's extremely helpful to sit in meditation every morning, but it's about bringing that ability of controlling the mind or recognizing when you're being pulled around, you know, so that you can exert more skillful ways of thinking. And eventually that leads to a state that doesn't have these things arise at all. But it's by recognizing that right now we have a tendency to reinforce our habits. That's why they became habits in the first place. You know, we want to recognize that we can interrupt that by not following that thought, because it's not helpful and it's not accurate. You know, this is what's challenging, is to really accept the power of the mind and accept that we're in charge of that nobody else can do that for us. You know, so that it takes really looking and really examining, what are we doing with this information, and see how we're keeping ourselves stuck in a negative state. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I don't know if this is, or what this is, but when I feel wronged or slighted, I have this like not need, but desire to validate my own feelings about it, and sometimes talking to someone else or even just self-talk, but sometimes I can't, or I struggle with leveling out if I get emotional about something
Sure.
without validating my own, thought or mind about
What does validation mean to you?
maybe it's like righteousness or something, I don't know.
So that's important. I mean, really being able to there's, this idea that, oh, I feel harmed here, I'm hurt, those things, it's, the Buddha would say, that this sense of I'm hurt, this sense of I is meaningless, that it actually has no foundation. We keep creating this story about an I that can be harmed, about an I that can be helped. We do talk our language makes it really difficult to get away from it, because we do say, I'm hurt. How can I help you? All this kind of things. And so it's not that we want to deny the suffering we experience. That's the first truth of the Four Noble Truths, is the truth of suffering. So we do want to acknowledge that we're suffering. And slowly we want to uncover the ways in which the way we think is contributing to that suffering. It's not necessarily that it's coming from outside of us.
I guess I completely agree with that. I mean, but how can you decipher whether or not it's the I that's getting in trouble, or like cases in the world where it's actually abuse?
Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't change the conditions, like, it's like being able to recognize there's a difference between fixing a situation and punishing someone for having caused it. That those are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to look in our own mind also to see where we are seeking, acknowledgement of the situation that needs to be remedied, and where we have the need to punish, okay? Because there are different forces at work there. And the Buddha would just say, of course, if you can remedy a situation, if you can make situations better, you go to court, you change laws, you do all this kind of stuff, you get away from someone who's harming you, all of that, we should definitely do. In the meantime, we want to look more deeply about what we do in our minds. Like, do we take this action as somehow personal to us? How dare you treat me this way? I've been kind to you, helpful to you, that kind of thing. I don't deserve this. When in fact, no one deserves it. It doesn't matter whether they were bad to, if you were bad to them or not. I mean, nobody deserves abuse. I mean, it's just abuse is abuse. So it's about taking our sense of I out of it to be able to have a wise response. If it's all mixed in with anger and righteousness and all this kind of stuff, the I, that sense of I that's in those states, is obscuring us to see solutions. We just want to punish or get even. And that's not, all that does is keep the cycle going, So it's about so it's a big picture thing. And so it doesn't mean that we don't remove ourselves from bad situations, bad actions, all that. It's just that we recognize that we also want compassion for people who do these things, so that they can receive the whatever help that they might be able to receive, be open to receive, so they can change things for their futures, and not just see them as those actions. So we can really want to correct injustices or things that are just bad situations, without it just being an opportunity for us to vent our anger. Does that make any sense? It's about really getting in there and being able to separate each of these different states of mind. You know, there's a hurt, that feeling of whatever it is, loss or hurt, or you're not going to get what you need, that kind of a place, and that you're the recipient of this treatment from what are you going to do about it, and on it goes, as opposed to holding on, packing your suitcase with it. Oh, this has happened to me, so I'm never forgiving that person, and I'm never, and I'm going to carry it around with me forever, as a wound, So we're all wounded, so we're all carrying around our wounds. But with practice, we become less wounded. We move on. Because we know that our happiness in the next moment really isn't dependent on what's happened to us. But that takes a lot of practice. So it's just it's all of these things we can bring together to help ourselves, all the different, avenues of support that we have. But if we really keep up this observance of what's going on in our own minds and how we're responding to it, and if it's skillful or not, the more we'll have, help in every moment because we carry it with us. We really want to develop that inner wisdom to be able to shield us from other people's out of control states of mind. To recognize that we don't have to take it on. We have to remove ourselves, but we don't have to actually be harmed. Our bodies might get hurt, but our minds don't have to be. Most of prisoners of war that have, really seem to thrive after the war is over, they don't carry that burden of what they experienced as if it's something that has to harm them forever. Doesn't mean they don't have the horrors. It just means that they can make that distinction in their minds about, my happiness is not dependent. Does that make sense? It's hard, but it's a lot easier than what we've been doing. That's what's so ironic, is once you get the hang of new habits, then we find out how much energy we have exhausted in carrying this stuff around with us forever, and just, it's really, we can expend our energy in a much more skillful way, because it takes a lot of energy both ways, so it's worthwhile just shifting where we direct our energy. And often we direct it outward, at others. We've been harmed, and then we, direct it right back, as opposed to actually going inward and healing and moving forward and really developing wisdom. So when we have these feelings that are very strong, it's good to sit with them and just be with them. And then notice when they pass. Don't keep feeding them. Don't have in your mind all the reasons why I should feel bad. And then keep making it bigger. We really just want, I feel sad. And just be sad and let it pass. We spend a lot of time feeding these states. Like, it's easy to notice it when we're angry or something. They did this and this, and we keep feeding it. We keep telling the story, we tell our friends the story, we tell, you know, so we just keep it going, you know. We have to watch when we do that to ourselves. We do it when we're harsh on ourselves, you know, when we just keep the thoughts going, oh, I'm a terrible person, oh, I'm weak, I should be over this by now, you know, blah, blah. You know, we just keep telling ourselves this story, instead of just going, oh, I'm sad. I mean, I can burst into tears about my death of my mother, who died, I don't know, 35 years ago. I mean, we just come full force, you know, as if it just happened. That's okay. You know, I don't have to feed that, but it's just like, I also, when it comes up, you just sit with it going, oh, I miss my mom in this moment. And it passes. So it's just about taking, you know, not imbuing them with something more than what they are, just temporary moments of mind, of thinking, of thoughts, of emotions. And we want to also acknowledge that when we have, you know, when you have, you know, genuine compassion arise for someone else or for yourself, to sit with them. You know, because it really is sad that we suffer. But if there's a cause of suffering and we can end the suffering, then that's what we want to aim for, not feeding the suffering. So cultivating this, you know, a positive attitude, you know, is like when we recognize, oh, there I've gone again, I've made another mistake. The positive attitude is, but I can keep working at it. It will not defeat me, you know, just because, oh, there I go again. You know, doesn't have, you know, the positive attitude is that we don't sit there and say, oh, the story's over. You know, I've done all that I can do, there is no more. That's not true. You know, so it's not, positive attitude doesn't mean that you wake up in the morning and say, oh, life is good. Really? It's not always good. You wake up in the morning going, my body is like crap. You know, everything I have to do today is, bleh, you know, just all that kind of stuff. You know, what you just want to do is, I can handle it. You know, you wake up and you go, oh, how can I be of help? Oh, doing this is really helpful to, you know, these folks. You know, I'm getting the things of life done. So it's not a pretending things are different than what they are. It's about recognizing that it doesn't have to control our feelings. These emotions we talk about so often. You know, that whatever's going on out here or in our bodies, you know, we can still be contented and be positive and, you know that they're going to be good moments as well. Does that make sense? Okay. Because we haven't done this in a while, please, or at least not while I was here, please introduce yourself to each other.
I went to high school and college. Then I moved around a lot. So we did a lot of like surfing, fishing, canoeing, paragliding,
I want to try paddleboarding, I've never done that.
Oh, yeah, you should. It's really fun.
Does it take a lot of skill? Like the first day you can do okay?
You can do it, yeah, in probably 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long. It's just the core, the strength in your core is what it.
My abs are crying.
Well, if you have strength in your core,
Did you make these cookies?
Yes, I did.
Where did you get the recipe?
It's a Southern recipe cookbook.
I know, my mom, this is the Christmas cookies my mom made.
I believe it. It's called Christmas
She
Rocks.
was from Tennessee.
Yeah, I can email it to you.
I don't need it, I won't cook.
Yeah, of course.
But it's just funny that, you know, I don't meet too many people who know this
Yeah.
recipe.
Yeah, I've
Good.
never heard that.
So it brings
My
back,
ex-husband had it. I'm not kidding. It's like,
so
you
it
think that it was a match made in heaven.
brings back memories.
Yeah, really good memories.
Oh, good. Good to hear. Good, good.
Okay. I always feel if there's a good conversation going on, you know, you feel a little, but I'm still gonna interrupt it, or not. So, I did. Okay, so, I'm teasing you, Melissa. So, I said I feel bad when I try to get people to come back, you know, I ring the bell and it's clear that somebody's having a very good conversation with someone else. No need to apologize at all, but then it was an opportunity for mirth, so I took it.
I like Martha.
Mirth is good, so, excuse me while I explore my crutch here. So it's important, most of us are quite aware of the negative minds we have. You know, we're aware when we're short-tempered or impatient or selfish or, you know, jealous or greedy or whatever. But we don't want to lose sight of all of our positive qualities that we already have. These are the basis for our Buddha nature. This is why we can feel completely confident that it's possible for us to remove all the negative states of mind. Because negative states of mind are just faulty. So once you correct it, they just won't arise. You know, it's the old, you know, if you know that the coiled thing in the corner of the barn is, you know, if you think it's a snake, but then you discover it's a rope, no longer will you think of it as a snake, because you corrected the misunderstanding of what you perceived. So it's just the same way that our unskillful or negative habits of mind, when we learn to, you know, where they're faulty, we can correct them and they won't arise. Our positive states of mind are already correct. So they just get bigger or more pervasive. So it's, and by looking at what, you know, so the, you know, the disadvantages of our anger, you know, but the advantages of our patience. Well, you know, first we have to notice that we're, you know, sometimes we really are patient. This is really quite, you know, something shocking for me since, you know, impatience pervades my mind. But it's not true. It's, you know, this idea that I'm always impatient, that's not true. You know, so we want to be aware of our positive states of mind that already are there, you know, and notice the conditions that they arise in, so that we can start looking for those same conditions in situations we normally don't respond that way, because the conditions are probably there too. And it's usually our self-interest that blocks our ability to see it that way. You know, it's like, you know, if you're in a hurry and there are people in, you know, in front of you that are taking their time, our self-interest of wanting this not to take any time obscures the fact that these are human beings out there that that have a right to be there. They got in line before you and blah, 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 you know, so that we can expand our circle of concern beyond just I to include the people we're with, whether we know them or not. You know? So this is when, you know, like, so if you have a tendency to gripe all the way that driving from home to work because, you know, whatever, you know, you can recognize that that's just feeding your misery all the way to work, and then, you know, that's probably going to carry over into your day, so maybe you want to celebrate instead. See all the kindnesses that other people maybe in their driving do, or rejoice in everybody who gets a green light, and rejoice in, you know, whatever. I mean, it's just, it's really about, or just rejoicing, oh, I have this opportunity to practice patience, you know, because we want to be more patient. But then we just need to, the more we just observe what's going on in our mind, don't forget to acknowledge those good qualities that are arising. The patience, the kindness, the generosity, the compassion. Because often we'll skip over it. Well, it's as if, oh yeah, but mainly I, you know, was being judgmental about so-and-so. There's no need to jump over things like that. You know, we are a mixture of both things, both the positive and, you know, or both the skillful and the unskillful. And if we're worried about, you know, something, you know, some activity coming up that you find challenging, you need to know you have this basis of good qualities, you know, that to draw from when you're in that difficult situation. That you may not be used to doing it in that situation, but you have them. So, you know, there's a possibility that you could draw from them. And if we practice in our minds ahead of time, you know, see ourselves responding to the family dinner a different way, to responding to the, you know, I don't know, whatever your nightmare image of family visits are. You know, but there's some, you know, or the meeting with the boss at work, or just even, you know, you love your friend, but not so much their spouse. You know, so, but you're having dinner together, you know. So, you know, you practice in your mind the quality, you know, you visualize you responding. They don't change at all. You see them as you see them, you know, but you change the way you respond. You know, and then when you're actually in the thick of it, that's given you a little bit of practice to perhaps respond in a different way. Because you, first of all, by just even thinking about responding in a different way, you're acknowledging it's possible to react differently. You're not blaming them anymore for the way you react, which is often what we do. We think, oh, I can't help it. You know, if you met him, you know why I react this way. But, you know, that's just self-serving. And it's self-serving suffering. So, you know, if you want to be happier, you'll want to respond in a different way. So, but we, you know, so we have to develop this acknowledgement that we have these skills to draw upon, you know, so that we, you know, we can trust that they're there. And we won't succeed all the time. But it just opens that door. It's possible for me to respond this way. And the more we practice it, we're literally changing our mind. You know, we're just interrupting the habit of always going this way, always doing this, always responding that way. All right, it's impossible for me to be any different. You know, we're interrupting that grasping onto us as being one way and allowing us to, you know, be free of that staticness. We're not static. So. So there are two ways meditation can help with this. You know, one is, you know, just sitting quietly and allowing your mind to settle down. You know, where you're, it's not that you're not thinking or something, you know, you don't, you know, your mind, that's what it does, it thinks. But we don't have to follow them. So we can let the mind settle by following the breath. And eventually you don't even really need to follow the breath. You're just able to settle in the stillness of the mind. So that's just helpful by having a calm starting point. And then you can also use meditation as a form of contemplation or analytical meditation, where you're looking at situations and, you know, evaluating something, whether it's skillful or unskillful. You know, what would be the advantage to you to act in this way instead of that way? Or, you know. And then when you have strong, you know, resonance, when you really feel like, oh yes, that's right. This is what I'd like to, you know, this is the direction I want my mind to go in. You let yourself rest in that state, really experience it. You know, just like now, we allow ourselves to experience the anger or the, you know, jealousy or the sadness or the grief. We also want to, you know, really experience patience and experience kindness and experience self-confidence and experience, you know, all of those states as well. You know, and our gut instinct about thinking, oh, well, I really want to go in that direction. I'm really tired of where I keep ending up. You know? And when you feel like that's, you know, like you, for me, it's like a surrender to that. Like, oh, I give up. I have to admit my unskillful habit and maybe want to let go of it, you know. But then I sit with that truth for me, you know. So the three, you know, basically the teachings say, you know, we need to listen to the teachings, or hear the teachings, and these days it can be read the teachings because we have easy access to books. But then contemplate, reflect on the teachings, you know, really check it out in our own, from our different experiences, our wisdom, try things out, and we meditate on what we learn from contemplation, so that we can internalize them. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding the second form of meditation where you're in that contemplative phase.
It's like thinking.
Yeah, was that like attaching or something? How would you do that without it being falling into like rumination or analyzation or something?
Because you're not just, you're taking in pieces from the teachings and applying them to what your experience has been, so that you can kind of investigate it a little bit, you know. So, well, what's, you know, is it, as opposed to just thinking about an incident. You know, we think of these things that we've done or did, or, you know, or someone did to us or whatever, and we just rehearse it again and again and again. That's not contemplating the teaching. You know, that's contemplating, you know, that's rumination. Or we get stuck in, I can't do that, I can't do that. That's just, you know, it's all about you, you know, it's just, you know, you're just stuck in that. That's not looking at, what does compassion mean? You know, so this truth of suffering, you know, it's really looking at, instead of getting bogged down in the details of the moment, you kind of like, you can use an incident from your life to go, yes, I suffer. It's clear. You know, so then you look at what it says about the truth of suffering. Then you look at the truth of cause of suffering. How do I contribute to my own suffering? You know, so you start to examine these things. Or maybe you even just read a paragraph out of a book that just has some meaning to you. So you want to look at that, you know, we want to run with whatever resonates with us, you know. So we're not linear. It's going to be spiral. You know? So, you know, but you read that, you get really familiar with it. Why does, you know, you kind of allow that to sink into you so that you can come from that place in whatever condition is appropriate to that particular understanding. So It's not a whole lot different than just thinking, it's just that it is focused thinking on what you're choosing to focus on. So it's like studying, like studying for a test or something. You've got a subject and you're studying it. It's not just random daydreaming. And then as soon as you realize you've gotten caught just by, I'm just ruminating, you want to stop that. Either you may need to just get up and do something else, to interrupt that flow. But it's developing that ability to tell the difference, and then, not encouraging the unskillful habit. And then just doing it over time, it's just sort of like, then you try it and you see, or ask questions specific about it. But it is, but it's really just thinking. But it's thinking about a particular thing, not just whatever your mind wants to think about.
It's thinking with Dharma.
Yeah, thinking about Dharma, well, yeah. That's what you said, right?
Or thinking with Dharma.
Yeah.
It's a different.
Yeah, but that's different too. First, you want to look at the teachings, investigate the teachings, and then you might apply what you think you understand of the teachings into some situation that directly involves you, and then you kind of go, okay, how would that go? If I acted from this wisdom, how would it look? And then anytime you have this experience of a truth or something, it's good to sit with that, not keep examining, just sit with that. Just like we do when we have waves of grief or, whatever. We don't have to keep talking in our minds. We can just sit with it. So, next Saturday night, it's party time. So, we're having our holiday dinner cooked by our beloved director, and it has nothing to do with the fact we love the food you cook. But, so if you haven't bought a ticket, please do. There's also, we're going to be auctioning little gifts that people have given us to auction, so we can, because we need money. Big surprise, So, our bills are high, and we're, we need those physical needs met. So, but it's mostly a gathering, just, because we like to hang out. How often do you get to hang out with Buddhists? It's not like a really common activity. Join us. So, anyway, so that's next Saturday night. What else? So we have our usual teaching on the Heart Sutra on Tuesday, which is a fairly advanced class. Carmen.
As far as the holiday party, please purchase, if you want to come, by
Now.
Thursday.
By Thursday?
Yes, because
Wow.
I'll go shopping. Yeah.
Okay.
Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay. The sooner the better for the
Yes,
cook.
absolutely. Yes, and then Thursday.
We continue the teachings on karma on Thursday. Anything else happening this week?
No, not this week. Oh, a reminder too, that will be closed 2 weeks from today, for that Sunday, the 23rd.
The 23rd. I'm going to visit my stepmom. So,
And then 3 weeks from today, instead of the meditation, we'll have the recitation of the 35 Buddhas. Just trying to remind.
so yeah, at the end of the year, we're going to do the usual, because we do it in this culture too about, New Year's resolutions. So the Buddhist version of that is purification of past action, negative actions. So we try to clean up our act and start the year fresh. So our meditation will be a purification practice instead of a meditation practice. It's very, very Tibetan. And so look at the calendar, because we have sort of some different things happening then. We'll have like 3 days of practice. And then Saturday the 29th is a day of meditation also. So that's all I can think of at the moment. But thank you for coming this morning, today. Now it's afternoon. So.
And Venerable Amy is coming in January.
In January, the end of January, like the 26th or something. So check that out in the calendar as well when it gets made. Not
But
yet.
it's on the online calendar.
It's on, okay, good. So, any questions? Ready to go? All right, so now we want to dedicate. We want to make our positive intentions, our aspirations for our time go to a greater purpose than just ourselves. Of course, we want it to benefit ourselves, but we also want, you know, the more we work on our minds, the whole world gets easier. And even if you fight over prayer books. So we're going to read the dedication prayers on 246. And the idea of this is trying to really make the wish that whatever would result in something positive for myself, that we're giving it away to benefit others who are suffering more than we are. 246.
246. How? Da-da-da.
I can't see. Okay. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the mysteries of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable.
Set a good intention for the week. Enjoy or not.
Thank you.